If your parents are giving you $200,000 to buy a house, how much control should they have? Because in this case, I don't think the father was being totally unreasonable. This girl calls me up. She explains to me that she wants to purchase a house, that it's going to be her and her partner. She explains they both have good credit, they both have solid income, and that her dad is going to give them $200,000 to buy. I said, okay, that's cool. Do the application. Let me take a look and we'll see what you qualify for. So when I'm reviewing the application, I see they both have really good credit. They both have pretty decent income. The daughter, she actually has a little bit better income than her partner. Her partner had some self-employment and we couldn't really document. But I call her up and I said, okay, based on what I'm looking at, and your dad giving you $200,000, I think 720, 730 would be a good approval amount. She says, okay, before we do anything, my dad wants to talk to you. I said, okay. Later in the day, the dad calls me up and introduces himself. And I can see he's kind of my age, maybe a little older than me. And he starts asking me a bunch of questions. He asks me about the price, the rate, the costs. Now, I can tell at this point I'm talking to somebody that's probably bought multiple houses over the years. They're very educated questions, and he seems very informed. He says, okay, so you did a 720 approval for them. He goes, what would my daughter qualify for without the partner? And I look at the numbers and I said, maybe around 650. And he asked me what the payment was. And I told him, and he says, what would the payment be at 550? I tell him that. And then he says, what would the payment be at 500? And I explained that to him. And he says, okay, I appreciate the information. Let me talk to my daughter and I'll get back to you. So later on that day, the daughter calls me up and says, what did you say to my dad? I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, you gave me the approval for 720, and he says that the max I can buy is 500. I said, okay. And she goes, not only that, but not only is the max 500,000, but he wants to go on the deed with me. And he says, I need to buy it alone. I can't buy it with my partner because we're not married. We're not in a longer term relationship. I said, okay. She said, but he's going to live there with me. I was like, well, that's what your dad said. She goes, what's the payment if I buy for 500 and we put 200 down? And I give her the payment, and it's lower. It's much lower. And it doesn't have mortgage insurance. It's much lower. And she goes, wow, we can afford way more than that. I was like, I hear you, but your dad said that if you want to get $200,000, that's what it is.